And back in March on City Matters, we talked about the need to raise understanding and awareness around epilepsy. And with the provincial election now underway, organizations like Epilepsy Ontario and Epilepsy South Central Ontario are hoping to hear more from our political candidates. I am joined now by the CEOs of those two organizations, Paul Raymond from Epilepsy Ontario and Cynthia Milburn, who's CEO of Epilepsy South Central Ontario, which has the Hamilton area as part of its service area. So welcome to City Matters.
Thank
and just
you.
Remind us a little bit about the prevalence of epilepsy and how we are affected.
So epilepsy, 95,000 people in Ontario have epilepsy, and about 27,000 of those people are drug refractory. They have not received seizure freedom from any sort of treatment or medication. And
the epilepsy itself, how does it affect, for those who don't know in our audience, how does it affect how does it impact the people who do have it?
It impacts it in a number of ways. There are different types of seizures that include loss of consciousness or maintaining consciousness. The seizures are short duration, but what we find most of the challenges is some of the psychosocial issues, some of the isolation issues, the fear of having a seizure because it's unpredictable. So it really affects people's employment, social activity, their involvement in daily activities and participating in an active life.
Yeah.
And depending on the severity of the condition, I suppose it could affect daily things that we might take for granted, like driving to and from work or to the grocery store or whatever you need to do.
And it affects a person's whole life. So a seizure is sudden bursts of electrical activity in the brain, and it causes temporary disturbances in the way the cells communicate with each other. So some seizures are more obvious and some are more subtle, but it does affect a person's whole life in, as you said, transportation and education and relationships and their whole life.
Well, and so often we take a lot of things for granted in our society and what we're able to do, and clearly the people who are impacted need support. So so we're going to chat about this a little bit as an election issue. So perhaps we can talk a little about your concerns, Paul and Cynthia, around the resources that are available to people who have epilepsy.
Maybe I'll start. There are 14 community agencies in Ontario that provide direct information and support. Our issue around this campaign is that we don't receive any government funding. It's really, as Cynthia can attest to, it's all done with local resources through some hard work, some fundraising initiatives. And we're really putting epilepsy on the electoral campaign. We want it to be part of the platforms. We want people to be aware that people with epilepsy matter. They need the supports, and we need some ongoing sustainable government funding to do that.
Yes.
Do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, so every year in March we go to Queen's Park and we talk to the MPPs and of all parties, because this is a nonpartisan topic. And epilepsy is the third most prevalent neurological condition, so third to migraine headaches and Alzheimer's. And as I mentioned, epilepsy affects a person's whole life, so it has a lot of impact. And so at Queen's Park this year, we had already submitted a pre-budget submission, and we had hoped to be included in the budget. We were not. However, we are hopeful to be, it was a learning curve for us, and hopefully we will be in the next budget. We do fall also under mental health, as 71% of people with epilepsy have a comorbidity of depression and or anxiety.
So Paul, a moment ago you talked about fundraising. So if there's not government support, where would you typically get the resources from to run the programs that you need to run to support the people who need the support?
Corporate sponsorship, individual donations, events like so many events that happen in all the communities. So it's really a matter of the communities supporting the agencies at this point. Yeah.
So great support, clearly, and people who I'm sure that are stepping up as individuals whose family or they themselves or their families may be affected. But why is securing government funding so important? And maybe, if you're comfortable, talk a little bit about what dollar amounts are you talking about?
Yes, absolutely. We're comfortable. We decided to create our submission on a successfully funded Alzheimer's strategy, where the current government gave $6 million to increase information and education in the communities directly for people with epilepsy. So we looked at, or with Alzheimer's, so we looked at the incidence rates, and we came up with a very strong, solid ask for $3 million, which would result in approximately 42 additional community epilepsy educators across the province to provide that support and information people need at the point of diagnosis.
So wait, $3 million?
Yeah.
Province-wide.
Province-wide.
Wow. And let's talk about the impact of that. I mean, easy for us, it's not,
right.
But is,
So
indirectly our money as taxpayers, but what would that $3 million do for people, the 95,000 people that are impacted?
Well, the study that was done in southwestern Ontario has proven that people who have that community relationship immediately after the diagnosis and the prescription have a much better chance of coping, and less often will rely on the emergency services. And the social impact is huge, because we connect, as the local community agencies, we connect people with people of the like. We connect them with people who are experiencing similar situations, and they really feel this sense of community, and that is they are less apt to call their neurologist, call their doctor, and go to emergency, because they have this community support right at diagnosis.
How important is it for the people who are impacted to just simply be able to sit down and talk with others and share their experiences? How important is that?
Well, it's really important, because we also have caregivers who are impacted, and epilepsy being episodic involves a whole family. So we have families of people who require support, not only for themselves, but they also offer to each other, to other families, and the impact that we have found is quite remarkable.
Now you're looking to generate some buzz online, social media. You have a hashtag Epilepsy Election going for Twitter and other forms of social media. How can people who are watching on Cable 14 here on City Matters get involved if they want to support?
Well, we're encouraging everyone to contact all the representatives from all three parties, or any party that may be existing in their community. Ask them questions around epilepsy. Do they support it? Would they support it moving forward? Go to all candidates' meetings. We've been encouraging volunteers and members of all the associations to go to the candidates' meetings. We want to make sure that we build those relationships with the candidates now, so that when the election is done, that we're one step closer to establishing strong relationships with the individuals that will be in power.
So you're looking for those champions, really, aren't you, out of your elected officials? And it's fantastic to get your volunteers involved, because great to get them out, and it gives you certainly more capacity within your organizations. What are you looking to hear from the provincial parties? Has there been any discussion around epilepsy as you've mounted this advocacy campaign? Has it generated any traction?
Yeah, sure. We meet with all the candidates now, and they have all said they would champion this. We have not had a negative response. They said, if we get in, or I get in, then they would be able to provide support. And that's all we're asking for at this point. And then when the new government is elected, then we'll be off to the races.
And much more specific with that.
Yeah.
Are these conversations you're having with party leaders, or just candidates throughout the province through your 14 agencies?
All the candidates. In the province. Yeah.
We're trying to really get the word epilepsy on all of the candidates' minds, get them to understand the stats, understand the severity, the issues, so that we're better equipped come post-election.
Well, that's fantastic. Our time, unfortunately, has come to an end. Cynthia Milburn and Paul Raymond, thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure to meet you both, and very best of luck with the campaign. And hashtag Epilepsy Election is the hashtag that we want people to use, and get out there and talk to your candidates. Still ahead, there's more than one organization in Hamilton working to reduce youth involvement in crime.
The 2018 Ontario Junior